Welcome to Coruzant Technologies, home of the Digital Executive Podcast. Welcome to the Digital Executive. Today's guest is Joe Palmer. Joe Palmer is the president of iProov Incorporated. Having joined iProov as employee number 2 in 2012, Joe was responsible for building the first prototype of iProov's flashmark technology. He then moved into a commercial role before relocating to Maryland to lead iProov's U.S. operations. Before iProov, Joe was co-founder and director of SoftForge, where he successfully delivered large and complex web-based e-commerce and secure information solutions for clients such as NHS and Shell. He has a degree in computer science from University College London. Well, good afternoon, Joe. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, Joe. Appreciate you jumping on. And this is exciting. Get to jump into another podcast today. And we're going to start by asking you that first question. And I want to talk to you about your career. So you've got that career in technology as a developer, director. Now you're the president at iProov. Could you share with our audience the secret to your career growth and what inspires you?
Sure. I mean, in some ways, the secret is to work hard and make sure you're working on something you enjoy. I always found when I was young, my dad was a technician and I was surrounded by computers and the internet, and when it wasn't that commonplace in those days. And I always found it fascinating that you can program a computer to do things and do things when you're not there. And the internet was this big up and coming thing where anyone could effectively write software and make it available to anyone that could come and find it. So, that's where I started, the pure kind of enjoyment of developing, getting a computer to do something and do something when you're not there and allowing people to benefit. And that grew. I went and did a computer science degree at University College London, which teaches you what you need to know to be able to write software for a living. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. And over time, you work on a whole range of different projects, you build up your experience, and you start having to work on things that are more complicated than just an individual writing a piece of software to accomplish a task. You have to work with a team, you have to work with the company, you have to consider how it's going to work for your client and for their customers, their end users. And you have to think outside the box. You have to think more than just, the lines of code. So you realize you're in this position where you're working, as an extension to the business that is the client at the time. And I find that fascinating because it's not just writing the software, building something to accomplish a task, but how that task is actually being used and what benefits and what value it's bringing to the customer and to the end user. And through that experience is where I met our founder and CEO, Andrew Budd, and we started working on iProov in evenings and weekends because it was a challenging problem that we wanted to see if we could solve, and it kind of grew from there. So I found myself deep into the technology, building the very first prototypes, up to understanding how that would work, how that integrate technically, how that would integrate from a business perspective into our potential customers, which became our actual customers. And then beyond that is, once you've built a product that fundamentally works, how do you sell it? How do you describe the value that you're adding to the potential customers, particularly where a market is evolving and customers don't necessarily know that your solution is what they're looking for. They may only just be sort of understanding that there may be a problem. So it's kind of layered upon layered upon layered of challenges which need to be solved, but fundamentally are solved by a technical problem. That's the thing that still drives me, that still excites me today. So that's kind of a bit of a background.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And we have a similar background. I was intrigued by the World Wide Web when it first came out. So I appreciate that story and where you've gone with it. So Joe, as you know, everybody globally has had to make major shifts to adapt to the new normal during this pandemic. Could you share with us what you're doing to help your organization stay relevant in this economy?
Sure. We were kind of lucky, I guess, in that the product that we have developed allows users to verify themselves remotely on their own personal device, mobile, tablet, laptop. Actually finding ourselves in this situation, which most of us have found ourselves where working from home where possible, or worse, not being able to work at all for a period of time. Our product actually excels in those situations. Initially, there was a lag. People are trying to work out how on earth they can run their business from home, with the workforce at home where possible. So initially, we looked around and no one was talking to us, but that they were simply adjusting to the new normal. And now we found that there's a big rush of people saying, right, the new normal isn't temporary, or it's certainly not temporary in the short term. This is going to be with us for a while and may well change the way we work, certainly office work, potentially forever. So what can we do to ensure that the security that we may have relied on before, in office, in person, physical security aspects that maybe were location based, how can we recreate that same level of security, or potentially even do better with remote working? We found ourselves quite well placed actually to help customers with what was originally our standard product. And we've also been able to listen to our customers and a whole new range of use cases. Typically, we've been used for bank onboarding or government services provided to their citizens. But we're finding now a lot of interest in employees are finding themselves at home. They would typically be able to access the VPN from the office in the computer, from the computer in the office. But how do they now securely do that from a home setting? So we've adapted, we've added some features and changed our messaging for certain use cases in certain markets. And we're finding quite a lot of take up coming post that kind of reconfiguration period where we've had to try and create this new normal that we now find ourselves in.
I appreciate you sharing that. Kind of the timing on your product or your platform was good in a way. I guess that's kind of the silver lining, but that's amazing to see you coming out with an innovative product like that, especially around security. And, obviously, all about the Zoom bombing, right? So that's amazing. So Joe, biometric authentication is really an up-and-coming technology here in the US. Could you tell our listeners what exactly biometric authentication is, and are there any use cases and how you've helped companies successfully digitize?
Of course, yeah. So authentication in general tends to be split up into three factors. Factor being you may have two-factor authentication, 2FA, or MFA, multi-factor authentication. And these factors are defined as a knowledge factor, something you know, like a password or a PIN, a possession factor, which is something you have, which could be your mobile device, it could be some sort of hardware token that you plug into your computer, it could be an ID card or something physical that you actually have access to, and an inherence factor, something you are. And this is where biometric authentication comes in. So you can prove yourself, and when you want strong authentication, two factors or at least two factors is common. So two out of those three, something you know, something you have, or something you are, is required to ensure that if someone else finds out your piece of knowledge, that password, that PIN, they can't just log in and pretend to be you. They need to both know your password or PIN and have stolen your device, and have spoofed the biometric authentication. So biometrics is kind of the newest factor that is starting to become mainstream. And biometric authentication is you using something about yourself to prove that you are who you claim to be. It's the most user-friendly of the factors because something you can forget, or someone else can know it. Something you have, you can lose, it can break, someone else can have it. But something you are really is you. Someone else can't be you. So you can't forget it, you can't lose it, it can't break. But it's slightly more nuanced than that, because when the sensors read your biometrics, it's effectively taking a copy of that biometric at that moment and assessing it for its validity. But biometrics can be copied in that sense. So if you think a fingerprint is a type of biometric, it's relatively secret. It's not completely secret, but I wouldn't be able to get your fingerprint very easily. And so a lot of biometric authentication has grown up around the concept of the biometric being secret and secrecy being a fundamental part of the security model. But that requires special hardware. Some devices have fingerprint sensors on, but not a huge number. We've seen a move towards face biometrics because most devices have a front-facing camera on for the video calls that we know today. So faces are a great biometric from a ease of use perspective, and the fact that they're accessible across a very wide range of devices. But they also have the biggest potential problem in that they are the least secret biometric. The vast majority of people, you could probably find a picture of them online pretty easily on LinkedIn or Facebook or many of the other social networks. So the key question is, how do you secure biometric authentication, particularly when it's face-based like we do? The answer to that is you have to make that authentication unique. You have to ensure that every time someone authenticates, the data they provide for that authentication is different to the previous time. And what we've developed is what we call a one-time biometric. just like you might get a one-time passcode via text message to prove the possession factor that something you have, we produce a one-time code, but it's actually a sequence of colors. And that code gets sent to the device just as you go to authenticate. The screen then illuminates your face with that sequence of colors. And that video of that face gets streamed and processed in real time. And we look at the way the light interacts with your face and the sequence of colors to ensure that it matches the code that we sent to the device. And from that, we can tell you are a real skin-covered 3D human and that you are present in that moment. And we call that genuine presence assurance. And that is our take on biometric authentication when it comes to face-based biometric authentication, because you need to ensure that person is genuinely present at that moment when they're doing the transaction.
Amazing. I love this technology and the way you laid it out for our audience, biometric authentication, obviously. But your technology is amazing, and I can't wait to see that as really being mainstream, hopefully here in the near future. So, Joe, thanks again. And Joe, could you share something? Our audience wants to know a little bit more about Joe Palmer. Could you share something from your career experience that would be helpful for those looking to grow their career in either technology or entrepreneurship?
Yeah, sure. So going back to kind of the first question, make sure that you're doing something you enjoy, because the only way to get really good at it is to do it a lot. And you really do have to work hard. There's no silver bullet. Once you really relish a challenge and you really enjoy it, then you find yourself in a whole range of opportunities. So I found in my early days, I was building websites. I was developing websites for customers, paid some money, you build a website, release a website, standard kind of stuff. But the key thing I found was going above and beyond where it mattered. So there are some websites, some customers that you could see, or you made a judgment on that this was actually really going to succeed. It was really going to do well. It was really going to make a difference. It was really going to make people's lives better. And not only is that a great driver, get you passionate about doing a good job, but if you genuinely do a good job, if you go above and beyond on those cases, not saying don't do a good job on the others, but if you really push the boundaries on betting on those kind of horses that you think are actually going to do really well, that gives them a better chance of doing well. And then they become a great reference. What you find is your career is built on a series of steps where you're looking backwards at the previous few successes. And in the moment, with the customer or client that you're trying to sell your service to, which is going to be like before, but bigger and better. And also looking forwards, going, well, if I can win this customer, then the next customer that's even bigger and better than them, I can use this as a reference. You suddenly find that your credibility of people have to trust that you are going to be able to do what you'll say. There's nothing like having a reference customer that does something similar or that people can relate to or that have heard of to give them confidence. You are going to be able to do what you claim what you're trying to sell them that you can do. So building upon the successes of projects and therefore taking the right bets, taking the right punts on which ones to invest that extra effort, stay late at the office, pull a few weekends, whatever you need to do to make sure you hit those deadlines, you go above and beyond the requirements and you really do a good job. That's the key in the early stages of your career. And then make sure you're looking to step up each time. You're not always going to be, the next project's not always going to be bigger and better than the previous one, but you want to be trending in that direction. When you work on these projects, some are big, some are medium, some are small. But as you get bigger ones, they want to be getting bigger. And as the medium ones can progress, they also want to be getting bigger. And your portfolio of successful projects ends up growing into something that's pretty compelling.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the nugget of wisdom. I know our audience will when we get this podcast published. So, Joe, it was a pleasure having you on today, and I look forward to speaking with you real soon.
Great stuff. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Bye for now.